Hello, another Q&A video for you today. Thank you to everyone for your comments, observations and questions. Thanks also to W5579 and Stock Stunner for your super thanks. Very much appreciated. Thanks for supporting the channel. I've been on my travels. I've been down to Ramsgate in Kent, my old stomping ground, to see Mark Bell of Hatch Moto. Now, you probably would have seen his bikes floating around over the last couple of years. He was commissioned by Yamaha last year to make a special XSR 900 that, when you first look at it, looks like a YZF 750 in all those lovely pastel 90s colours. He did a thing called the Slab Shot before that, which is a pink and white cross between a Slingshot and a GSX-R 1000, which looks fantastic. And this current bike is called the Cyclone, and it's a GSX-R 1000R 2022 model, and he's made carbon fibre bodywork for it, inspired by Suzuki's of the late 80s, early 90s. So it's not actually a replica of anything, but when you look at certain parts, you think, oh, that's an RGV, that's a GSX-R, and it's all in Pepsi paintwork. He's done all the carbon fibre himself. He's fabricated an aluminium fuel tank, billet aluminium parts like the top yoke, stuff like that. Is absolutely amazing. And he was commissioned by somebody to build that, so I went down to see that. So you can see that video on this channel under the heading The Special Ones, and that's the 5th in the series now. There's another 4 bikes, 3 of those are Suzuki's, strangely. I think Suzuki's are ripe for not improving, but as a good basis for specials. And then staying on the Suzuki theme, I was on a launch last week in Montpellier in the south of France, riding the new SV7 GX. You can read all about that in MCN, Bike Magazine, Ride Magazine, online and video. I won't spoil the review, but what I can say, which anyone can find out just from the specs, is that it still uses the SV650 V-twin engine. So Suzuki kind of saved that from, because it didn't adhere to Euro 5 Plus. So they brought it up to date. It now powers the SV7, which is basically an SV650 with taller bodywork and a more comfortable riding position. So you call it a sports tourer, really. You could call it a tall rounder, but it's not actually that tall. So it's really great to ride a V-twin engine for this size of bike. Obviously everything's going parallel twins now, and that's because they're more economical to make than a V-twin or an inline 4, which is why we've got so many parallel twins, and they're great. They could be made to be exciting, but there's nothing quite like a V-twin. The other thing, it's cost for the plain white version £6,999, which is very affordable, and you can see they've probably done that because the Chinese are coming. So that's a big tick for that bike as well. And even better than that, it's got a 10-year warranty, so 3 years free warranty, and that gets bumped up by a year every time you get your bike serviced at a main dealer, up to 10 years, which is just fantastic. And it makes me think that if the Chinese really want to be taken seriously, they need to do a similar thing, like in the car world when the likes of Kia came along and gave a 7-year warranty. I think people need that kind of reassurance, because the Chinese bikes, as good as some of them are now, they've still got a normal like 2-year warranty. So I really think they need to step things up if they want to be taken seriously. Got lots of Cox Motorsport news. So the big focus, now that the dust has settled on the TT, is BSB, and BSB last weekend went to Knock Hill. They had torrential rain on the Friday while the rest of the country was basking in a heat wave, but their riders, Cox Motorsport riders, have done very well. So Ilya Mikulchik, who has come up from National Superstock 1000, is now in BSB, so he got his first BSB points.
So yeah, season going so far quite okay. This week we did quite a good step with the bike, with the performance, and we improved the speed, improved the bike, and this is for sure make good feelings. And yeah, for sure fight minimum on the points area and try to close gap to the first top 10 guys. And this is the target, and I think the real possibility for us. It's nice to be a part of Carl Cox team, and big thanks that you support our team and we going forward together and try to get good results.
John Holden, sidecar driver, is still doing his thing at 69, which is amazing. And there's double podiums for Luke Mossey as well in Superstock. Carl himself is busy doing crikey knows what. He's so busy. He's doing loads of DJs. He started his residency in Universe in Ibiza. He has just appeared on the Late Break Show, which is a YouTube channel run by Johnny Smith. I know Johnny Smith well. We live in the same town. I think we do anyway, or at least we did at the moment. He is an ex-EMAP stroke Bauer employer from when he used to work on Max Power, and he's now got a fantastic YouTube channel which is mainly cars. And the Late Break Show deals with like barn finds and speaking to people like Carl about their life in cars. And he's also had Shaky Byrne on doing some bike reviews as well. So if you want to delve a little bit deeper into Carl's life away from the DJing and into his love of cars, and he talks about bikes as well, that's well worth taking a look. And he's going to be at Santa Pod on the 4th and 5th of July for round 2 of his own drag racing championship called the Cox Motorsport 590 Pro Mod Series. And that's where all the drivers have got to get as close as they can to a 5.9 second quarter mile, which is crazy. So if you want to see Carl, get yourself up to Santa Pod. I'm going to be there as well on the Sunday, so if you're around, say hello. Also, talking of events, there's going to be an inaugural Modern Classic Monday, which is a bike meeting at the Ascent Cafe in Offord Cluny. And Offord Cluny is just off the A1, where it joins with the A14 near Brampton Hut Services, probably about 5 minutes from there. But if you Google it, you'll find it. So that's on the 6th, 7th of July between 6 and 9. So the idea is that the theme of this bike night is going to be modern classic bikes. So late 80s, early 90s, early noughties, that kind of bike, which people of our age find very interesting. And, you know, that's what I've feature a lot on my channel with what makes this bike great. So there's going to be a lot of those types of bikes there. There's going to be prizes and trophies for the best bike at the meeting as well. They've got a massive car park, so there's plenty of room to park your bike. The Ascent Cafe itself is fantastic. They do lots of events, including music events, vinyl nights. They do food and drink, really nice food and drink as well. I'm going to be popping along with my 750, so if you ever wanted to see my 750 in the flesh and ask any questions, you're more than welcome. And also I'm going to be doing a live Q&A, kind of a live thanks for asking really, during the night as well. So if you've got any questions you want to ask me, pop down and say hello. So this is the first one. Hopefully there'll be some more in the future, and if the weather is as nice as it is now, it should be a really good night. The other thing is, a lot of people have been asking me over the years about the smiley logo, which I've got on the side of my crash helmet. There's a picture of it there, and it is quite a nice little logo, and that kind of evolved from Rich Art, actually designed it, who paints my crash helmets. When I had my first crash helmets done when I joined MCN, I used to have a smiley on one side of my crash helmet and a Union Jack on the other. And when Arai decided to make a replica of the crash helmet in 2005, they had to kind of disturb the smiley logo to avoid copyright. So what they did, I suggested to them that we make it a half and half smiley Union Jack, and Arai put the eyes and the mouth in a sticker pack in the box separately. So the actual crash helmet was basically just a yellow blob with some Union Jack markings on it. So a lot of people have said, do you do key rings of that? Do you do neck tubes of that? And all the rest of it. So I've decided to get some done. So QVC time here. So I've got some Smiley Jack, as we'll call them, neck tubes. I've got some key rings. I've got some air fresheners, which smell really nice, which you can put in your car, obviously. And there's some beanies and mugs coming. So they're not available just yet. They will be soon. And everything is under a tenner in true market stall speak. So pretty affordable. And you'll be able to buy that via my neevesybikes.com website. So it's not available yet, and I'll let you know when it is. But it's a little bit of fun, and I think the little logos look really cool out in the outside world. But let me know what you think. So let's jump into our first actual question. So this is from Alex13605. Would you mind doing a rear brake only special video? I've not seen a single video focusing on this topic at a higher skill level. Cheers, brother. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I mean, back brake usage is very much talked about a lot now. It was never really, when I was growing up riding bikes, the thought was that bikes have got massive front brake discs and they're the components with the most power, so why would you use the back brake? So really it's not until, I suppose, the last decade or so people have really been talking about using back brakes. A lot of people have been using back brakes, and not necessarily people have known they're doing it. So I said this before, if you look back on some even old 500 Grand Prix pictures, Schwantz and Rainey, you'll see, if you look at there, you don't actually see many pictures where you can see the rider going into the corner and you can see where their inside foot position is, because normally they're leant right over and they're hiding that. But on the occasional corner, you can see that a lot of those riders would use the back brake. I know Simon Hargreaves from Front End Chatter and XPB uses the back brake a lot. So a lot of riders do, but it's not really spoken about. And one of the other reasons it's not really spoken about, especially at kind of a higher riding level or a faster riding level or a track level, is because doing it wrong can cause a lot of problems. If you stamp on the brake too hard, you'll lock the rear wheel and lose control of the bike, and then something bad will happen. So most riding schools kind of err on the side of caution with regard to that. So I'm going to do exactly the same. It is a very nuanced thing to practice the back brake. It's probably easier to practice it on the road where the speeds are a lot less, and it's a good idea to practice it where it's quiet, where there's no one around, in a straight line as well. If you've got ABS, all the better. But back brake usage is so important for the road and track equally. On the road, it gives you more stability, it gives you more feel, it gives you more control, it gives you more grip, it makes you feel like you've got a third wheel on the bike. The same goes on the track. It gives you a lot more stability on the brakes. It helps the bike turn into the corners. It stops it wheeling. And in fact, speaking to the Ducati test rider, Alessandro Vaglia, he says that the big difference between a pro rider and an amateur is the fact that the pro uses the back brake so much. And to the point that Ducati's new style of ABS electronics mimics back brake use, even if you don't stamp on the back brake. So linked brakes are nothing new, they've been around for a long time, but the new Panigale, the new Multistrada V4 RS has got a system that when you trail brake into the corner with the front, then the back comes on automatically, depending on the lean angle, depending on the pitch and the yaw of the bike, because the bike knows where it is in space, because it's got these fancy new IMU electronics and just all the sensors that the bike's got, and it knows how to regulate the back brake and pull you into the corner, which is really clever. So if we talk about the road, having maybe 80% front brake, 20% rear is a good balance for the dry, and you'll find that the bike will brake flatter when you come to brake. You're not going to be all over the front, so it makes it more comfortable because there's not as much weight on your wrist. Putting the back brake on drags the rear of the bike down, so it makes it nice and stable. And just doing a little bit of trail braking into the corner, just at shallow lean as you start to turn in, dragging the back brake as well as the front just helps the bike turn really tight. And it's also amazing for pillion riding, where you'd probably use 50-50 front to rear, or even 60-40 rear to front. just to make the bike nice and flat and give the pillion and you an easier time when you're riding through corners. It's great around town. It's great when you're picking up a closed throttle if the bike's got quite a jerky power delivery. And then on the track, again, braking with a little bit of rear before you whack on the front at high speed will let the bike kind of sit on its bum a little bit more and be more stable. Dragging the back brake into the corner will help it turn tighter, and if you're going wide, a little feather of back brake will bring you back in again. And then accelerating against the rear brake coming out of the corners will help a super bike. It will stop it wheeling as well as all the electronics. So it's a very subtle thing, and having the dexterity with your big right foot and boot is a bit difficult to regulate at first. A lot of people like thumb brakes or scooter brakes, and they're really good. I've never actually tried on the track a good thumb brake because, you know, trying to get to it is quite difficult, which is I guess why they've got scooter brakes. And I really like an actual scooter brake, like on my T-Max I use a lot of back brake, and on a long bike like a long scooter or a cruiser or a big long touring bike, the back brake's often more effective than the front anyway, because just pressing the front just makes the bike kind of plow. You haven't really got the front grip, whereas putting the rear brake on makes the back sit down and you're using the grip from that big fat tyre. So it's just, for me, a magic tool for all types of riding. You can get away with just using the front, and I'll admit that if I'm racing and absolutely on autopilot, quite often I'll forget to use it. I would just use the front because there's too much going on. But at track day pace or road riding pace, then I would always use it. It's just an amazing thing. But it's something to be treated with care, because whacking on too much back brake will obviously lock the rear wheel and it could cause you all sorts of trouble. But yeah, good question. And maybe I can try and do a video one day where I can set up a load of cameras around my brakes and I can kind of demonstrate that in real time. But thanks for your question. Next is from Excel Master 4779, regular contributor. So nice to hear from you. I'd be interested to hear your take on the TT. There were some serious accidents this year, sidecars were cancelled, and also many races didn't go ahead due to bad weather. I often wonder why they don't make it safer by reducing BHP and some track changes. Up the technical expertise so that the sidecars are well running before the races, and just move it to July or August to improve the prospect of better weather. Keep up the great work. Thanks very much. Well, you know, the TT is always divisive. It's always a big debate. We've got to celebrate the fact it exists in this mollycoddled world of ours. I can only talk as a fan, the same as you, and see it from an outside. I've got no real inside information. But what I would say, that the Outside Line podcast with Jamie Whittam and Jack Bernacle, they talk about the kind of the perils of the TT and how it used to be and how it is now and maybe how it should be. So I think their current episode is up now, so that's well worth checking out for somebody who's actually been there and done it, raced at the TT, commentate at the TT, knows the riders and all the rest of it. So you're not really going to get any better opinion than James Whittam on that. And most subjects as well, probably back brakes as well. What I would say is, I mean, what are your points? So yeah, there were some serious accidents and we all know how dangerous a TT can be, but it is the ultimate test of man stroke woman and machine. So we've got to celebrate that. You know, there's lots of other dangerous activities in the world and people should be allowed to do those kind of things if it's not harming anybody else, I think. Bad weather, there's not a lot you can do about that. Whittam was saying that obviously they used to race in the wet, so there was never any races cancelled. Obviously now they're waiting for good weather for safety because they don't run wets. So that's just one of those things. It's just sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not, and maybe that adds to the whole kind of mystique of the TT, because when you do get a dry race, it is that much more special. But you've got to feel sorry for everyone at the TT, because the practice week was glorious sunshine, and then unfortunately the race week was more or less a washout, which is a great shame. when it comes to reducing BHP, that's an interesting thought, because how far do you peg it back? At what point do you make a motorcycle less dangerous if it hits something solid? I don't think BHP really pegging it back is the answer so much, because even if you're riding a 125 and lost control, like a 125 learner bike, and hit something, it's not going to end well. So, you know, where do you draw the line, really? You know, understand now a lot of the super bikes and super stock bikes will be making well over 200 horsepower, 220, 230 maybe, but would making them all 150 horsepower make them safer? I don't know. I think they're working on the sidecars from a technical point of view to hopefully bring them back next year, because that's all part of the TT. They're fantastic to watch. They're dramatic, they're fast. I mean, it's all part of the fabric of the TT as well. And then as far as moving it to the summer, I mean, that's something I've often thought about as well, because obviously they have the Manx around that time and the weather's normally good. But again, it's tradition, and I think that to bring people to the Isle of Man TT at that time of the year is good for the local economy, because people would be going in the summer anyway. So maybe having it when we have it is a good thing. There's so many questions, you know. How can you make the track safer as well? You know, they've made it safer by not racing in the wet. They've made it safer by tidying up some of the road surfaces, but you know, having bumpy roads is part of the attraction and part of the skill of why the likes of Dean Harrison is better than another rider, because they can cope with all these different conditions being thrown at them and threading the needle through, you know, the roads of the Isle of Man, which is just incredible. You know, how do you make the Isle of Man TT as safe as a short circuit? You just can't. But I think it is an amazing event. I'm not really placed to know how you should change it, or even if you should change it, it's fine as it is. It is luck of the draw with the weather, that's a fact. But maybe you guys watching could drop a comment and let me know what you think of the TT in general, and what you think of this year's TT, and how you think it can be improved, or if it even needs improving. But yeah, it's a great topic. Thank you very much, XL Master. This is from Pugster YT4086. Question: the CF Moto V4's top speed was just shown off. What are your thoughts? I see a lot of people making fun of it for its acceleration. Well, yeah, the V4 Superbike looks amazing, doesn't it? It was, when it was shown at the EICMA show in Italy at the end of last year, you even saw Mr. Domenicali, Claudio Domenicali from Ducati looking at it with its big wings and its V4 engine. It's very decadent, isn't it? And CF Moto have been releasing little teaser clips. So there was one of it just riding around outside an exhibition centre, I think. And now there's some information come out where they speed tested it at 162.2 mile an hour, which is a new Chinese record for a motorcycle. So that's pretty fast. So that would put it on par with any of the, I mean, we don't really speed test superbikes anymore, because the whole performance testing with superbikes has almost become irrelevant, because the performance is just so excessive now and the power so excessive. But when we last tested superbikes, they would all do round about mid 180s basically, because there was some kind of restriction in there. And obviously if you look at the TT or Northwest, you'll know that superbikes can do well over 200 mile an hour. So I'm guessing that the CF Moto would kind of be the same, as it's a road bike. Maybe it could go even faster, I'm sure it could. But it's an impressive stat, isn't it? I'm not sure, I haven't seen about the people making fun about its acceleration. Is it quite sluggish? Do you think they geared it really high? I don't know. But I think CF Moto, of all the Chinese manufacturers, are the ones that, if you imagine all the Chinese manufacturers have started this race to be the best, most of the Chinese manufacturers are still on their warm-up lap, but CF Moto have done their warm-up lap. They've done lap 1 and they're well and truly into the race, and we're starting to really take them seriously. They win MCN group test against the European competition and the Japanese competition on merit, not just on price. A lot of them are very good, especially some of the smaller capacity adventure bikes. I think they've done a really good job with their kind of PR. The Moto 2 and Moto 3 bikes at World Championship level look fantastic in their kind of turquoise and pink colours. It's made them become more accepted. And I think the CF Moto will be a good bike. At the end of the day, I don't think there should be any worry that it is Chinese, because the components, if you think, okay, the frame is going to be a metal frame that's built in a factory like any other motorcycle. The engine is probably got components that is shared with other big brand motorcycles, or at least made in the same way or the same factory. Same goes with the electronics and the wheels, and they'll have branded tyres. So, you know, apart from the stigma of it being Chinese, which only really exists in some countries, some people don't even think twice about products are Chinese, because they're so intertwined with our life now, with all kinds of products, from the clothes we wear to the phones we use and the TVs we watch and everything in between. So I think it's good. I think while all the main manufacturers are almost, they're not being too innovative, they're just really trying to make their products a little bit more affordable, a little bit more refined. It's the Chinese and CF Moto that are really kind of there out on a limb producing new exciting bikes, and this V4 is a case in point. So I can't wait to see one in the flesh, and I really hope I get to ride one as well. But yeah, I think it's really good. Thanks for your question. Right, this is the first of our tyre Q&As. First one's from CM Razor. Hi, an easy one for your Two Tyres tyre Q&A. Thanks very much. I'm looking to move up a notch from the Michelin Power 6 that I use on my GSX-R 750 for track days only. However, I ride to and from the track and I'm in the Inters group. I'm looking at the Michelin GP2 or the Metzeler RR K3, both a bit stickier but some wet weather grip if it rains. Thoughts on these or others to consider? PS, I'm heading to Spa in June for 2 days, so fingers crossed it stays dry. Well, thanks for your comment. I think that you might have been to Spa already. So I know someone else that's been to Spa, Rob Nesbitt, who we've done a few bikes with on this channel. He's been, and the weather wasn't so good. So I hope you didn't do that track day. Fingers crossed, because it's such an amazing track. Your Michelin Power 6 are kind of good all-round sports tyres. And then the Metzeler RR K3 and the GP2s are kind of more towards pure track day tyres. So I would suggest going into the middle ground. And the tyre I'd recommend the most is the Pirelli Diablo Rosso Corsa 4. And I've done a review on that in my channel a couple of weeks ago, so you can find exactly what I say about that. But I use that on my GSX-R 750 for exactly the same kind of trip, to ride to Spa and do a track day when I'm there. It's pretty decent in the wet, warms up quick, the durability is excellent, the grip is excellent, and I just think it's an amazing all-round tyre that really handles road riding and track riding really well in equal measure. So that's my kind of go-to tyre for the kind of riding you're describing. There's also the new Metzeler Sporttech 01 RS, which is equivalent to that, which I haven't tried yet, which I hope to try next month, and I'll bring you a review on this channel hopefully very soon. So it's the Rosso 4 Corsa I'd recommend for that. But I hope you have a good trip to Spa, and if you did go, I hope you did have a good trip, even if the weather wasn't so good. But thanks very much for your question. Next is from Dave G4644. My background is in drag racing and sprinting, so I'm familiar with tyre setup for that. However, I have foolishly entered a proper hill climb in September at Scammondon Dam. My current Shinko hookups are obviously unsuitable, so I'm looking for a pair of suitable tyres for the event. No tyre warmers allowed, so they'll need to be ready to go from the start. The bike's still street legal, so preferably suitable for road use too, and unlike drag racing will still be run in the wet. What would you suggest? That's an interesting question. You didn't say what bike you've got, because that would have some kind of bearing on it. So no tyre warmers allowed, so that kind of puts out any race compound tyres, because they're just not going to be up to temperature in the short amount of time you've got to do a hill climb. The best advice I've got for you really is to see what everyone else does. And I would imagine, and I've seen in hill climb paddocks, that most people use racing wets, and they will be up to temperature straight away. The disadvantage with racing wets is when they do get hot, obviously they've got big tread blocks and they'll move around. They'll be quite, they give the bike a little bit of instability probably by the time you get all the way to the top of the hill when they're really hot. So that's the disadvantage of those, although you could get hard compound wets, so they may not be quite as wobbly. But the problem is that they're not road legal. So if you're going to ride to the event, that's a problem. Or if the rules stipulate you've got to have a road legal tyre, that's a problem as well. I'd be tempted. It's a real difficult one, because you've got to think the first quarter or third of the run, you need a really dependable tyre that's going to warm up. And then when the tyre is warm, you need something ultra sticky. So it's always going to be a compromise. I'd be tempted to try a sports touring tyre. So that would be pretty good from the get-go, which might give you kind of a good advantage to begin with. But then depending on the weight and power of your bike, that might start kind of giving up as you sort of get further up the hill. Or even a sort of a good all-round sports tyre, but then a good all-round sports tyre is not going to be as good at the beginning. So if I was doing that event, I think I'd probably try a sports touring tyre. And then, I mean, they're so sticky now. They're unbelievable. When you think that the Haslams, when I worked at a Haslam school, would do sub 1 minute 40-second laps at Donington on Fireblades on a Bridgestone, what would it have been back then, T31 or 32 of the day. So they don't lack grip. So if I was going to experiment, I'd probably go down that route, or if not, if you're allowed to, then run racing wets. But let me know how you get on. Thank you very much. The next is from Mick Usable. Hi Michael, quick tyre question on my 2000 SR-RR 600. I'm running Bridgestone BT016. They'll be due for changing soon. Would S21s be a decent replacement for the road, as the latest tyres are out of my price range? Thanks Mick. Yes, is the simple answer. So the BT016 are Bridgestone's middle of the road sports tyre, one up from a sports touring tyre, one down from something like an RS11 or RS12. So they're a good all-round sports tyre, and they're very good. They're kind of mid-noughties kind of vintage, mid to late noughties vintage, and they kind of evolved from the BT14 and the BT12 and the BT10. And then after the 16 became the S series, so the S20, S21, S22 and now S23. So the S21s they're the same type of tyre. They're still that good all-round sports tyre, but they're an evolution of the BT016. So I think actually there was a BT20, so that's one evolution away. There might have been a S20 Evo, so it's two evolutions away. So you'd see a big improvement. Obviously the newer tyres will give you a little bit more of everything, a bit more durability, a bit more wet grip, a bit more dry grip, a bit more feel. But if you're on a budget, I think a new pair of S21s would suit you just fine, and it'd be a step up on what you've got at the moment. So I hope that answers your question. But that is the end of the tyre Q&A portion of this video, and a big thanks has to go to Two Tyres. Everything I've talked about in this section you can get from Two Tyres. The link is in the description. They're a mail order tyre retailer, but also they do other motorcycle parts and accessories, and they've also got a physical tyre unit in Greenwich. So if you're in the London area, they'll change the tyres on your bike as well and do kind of light service work as well. So have a look at their website. But thanks very much to Two Tyres. Right, back to the questions. So Equilat And there are no dumb questions, right? No, that's true. So then, is engine braking used going into a turn on modern bikes? Or is it all about the brakes and downshifting only to set up the exit of a turn? I've always used engine braking, but think with Brembo Monster brakes and such, have techniques changed? Would that be the same for an F1 car? Once a biker, always a biker. Thanks for the info. Well, there's no dumb questions. I mean, I've not got a clue about F1, so we'll leave that one there. But like everything with bikes, everything works with everything else. Everything's grey. There's no black and white with a bike. Everything's nuanced. So engine braking is a part of your slowing down process going into a corner. Too much engine braking is a problem because you can lock the back wheel and cause instability, and that's why electronic engine braking controls exist and slipper clutches exist. Too little engine braking, like on a two-stroke, won't give you enough kind of pull back into the corner, so you'll end up kind of just sailing on through the corner and having to rely completely on your brakes. Whether you want too much or too little engine braking is often a personal choice depending on your riding style, especially if you're on the track. Some people like that freewheeling feeling of a two-stroke. I kind of err towards that. Some people like a lot of kind of four-stroke engine braking where the tyres almost lock in. So that's kind of a nuance depending on your riding style. But in general terms, you do need engine braking to help you brake into a corner to complement your brakes. Obviously, your main braking power is coming from the front brake, and then you've got a little bit of the back brake to keep the bike stable, and then you've got some engine braking as well. But the way to think about engine braking and gear selection is that as you're in the corner, as you start to turn in, you should be in the gear you need to be in to accelerate out the corner. So you don't want to be changing gears as you start to turn in. Yeah, change gears in the braking zone, definitely. And say if you're going from a fifth gear straight to a second gear corner, the process would normally, your first touch of the brakes, you'll be fifth to fourth, and then you'll be quickly going third to second, depending on the kind of length of your braking zone. And then as you start to turn, all your braking should be done, because that's going to be unsettling the bike. And by virtue of the fact you've changed down all those gears, then you will have engine braking, and depending on your riding style, that would be too much or too little for you, and then you can start to think about how you adjust it to suit you through electronics, through slipper clutches, or even through manually slipping the clutch as you turn in. So despite the fact that braking power's got better, nothing's really changed with the technique. You still need some engine braking, but the most important thing is being in the right gear when you're in the corner. So you need the right gear to make sure at the right revs mid-corner. You don't want to be too low in the revs because the bike's going to be too lazy coming out the corner. It's not going to give you enough pullback, and you're riding right where peak torque starts, so it's easier to spin the tyre. So it's more of a dangerous kind of situation to be in. And if the tyre does spin, then it's hard to catch it because it's at such low revs, it can just spool right up to the red line and pitch you off. Too high in the revs mid-corner will mean that on the way out of the corner, between the apex and the exit curb, you're going to run out of revs. Sometimes that's unavoidable on a really small bike, but on most big bikes, you'll be in a gear where you can reach the edge of the track in the same gear that you're at the apex, more or less. So your gear choice is dependent on those things, and then working back from that is going to give you some engine braking, which you can then adjust. But yeah, I don't know how F1 do it. I guess it's the same kind of process. I don't know if they just fly into a corner and freewheel, but they probably use a combination of engine brake and brakes as well. But thanks for your question. Next is from Graham Hill, Y5N. Thanks for your question. Great channel and easy long may you continue. I hope I do. Thank you very much. At bike launches, do manufacturers leave on OE tyres or replace them? Interesting question. I would say that generally it's OE tyres. For every road launch, pure road launch, definitely OE tyres. The only time they would change them would be for track launches. Sometimes they'll put on a tyre that's a little bit more suitable to track riding than the standard OE tyre. And there's an argument to leave the OE tyres on, because that's what you would buy from a dealer, or you would put a sticky tyre on so you can explore the outer edges of what the bike's like. If the bike comes on quite a conservative tyre and you take it on the track, well then you're never really going to experience how well it comes out of a corner, or how well it can corner, how well it can brake, and all the rest of it. So at most bike launches they'll put something stickier on, quite often slicks or something very track focused. And then on off-road launches they'll put something on that's a little bit more suited, especially if it's quite a serious off-road bike. They'll put kind of chunkier, more off-road focused tyres on, just so you can feel what the bike's doing and enjoy the bike as it was intended. But generally I would say 80% of bike launches, the bikes are on their OE tyres. Thanks very much for your question. Right, where are we? Two more. This one's from Barnet Speed Suzuki Thou. So give me a reason to buy the Bimotor Terra. Hub steering advantages and riding differences, especially cornering. Seriously though, is the technique any different? I'm thinking of brake, steer, accelerate, road technique in particular, etc. Debate. Many thanks. Well, yeah, interesting question. So yeah, the Bimotor Terra is the sports tourer with hub center steering, funny front end as we'd call them. And the idea of hub center steering is that it separates out the braking forces from suspension. So with normal forks, when you brake and turn into a corner, for example, the forks dive, but at the same time, so that's because you've got the weight transferred on the front, and that uses up the travel. And then when the wheel is trying to deal with bumps and pushing the forks up and down, the more the forks dive, the less effectively the forks work, until a point where they run out of travel, and then at the extreme you won't have any suspension left. That's a system that's evolved during the whole kind of lifetime of motorcycles and is still raced on at the highest level. It seems to work. Fork technology is amazing now. You can kind of have your cake and eat it, but the theory is that they're flawed compared to a funny front end, and a funny front end will separate out those forces. So generally with funny front ends, you've got a front swing arm of some description. You'll have some kind of linkage for the suspension, and then you'll have some kind of linkage for the steering, and you generally have a front shock absorber. So the advantage of that is that you can brake really hard, and the shock absorber takes the kind of the weight transfer, but then the rest of the suspension is free to deal with the bumps. And the feeling that gives you is a real feeling of light steering. I've ridden hub center steering on track, where you can brake at the maximum and just flick the bike from side to side with so little effort, which is a complete contrast to what happens when you're hard on the brakes. When basically you've just gummed everything up by braking hard, even though the reduction in steering angle is helping you turn. At the extreme, you're basically just losing your suspension when you're braking hard. So it has got a lot of advantages, but the disadvantage is at racing level, none of the big teams have got time to or the money to develop a system. So for example, I rode a really nice Moto 2 bike with hub center steering, a Virus, and that's the chap that actually designed the Bimotor Tazy. I think it's Ascanio Rodriguez, I think. And that bike was beautiful. I rode it at Misano, and you kind of think to yourself, wow, this could really compete at the highest level, but what team is ever going to take that technology and risk being at the back for 2 seasons? They're just not. So I don't think it's ever going to evolve. The other disadvantage of hub center steering is that because there's so much noise between the handlebar and the tyre with all the linkages, you don't get the same feel that you do with forks. Whereas with forks you can feel the tyre grip as kind of a vibration that comes up through the tyre, through the wheel, up through the fork leg and up through the handlebars, and you can feel what's going on. So that kind of lack of feel really hurts a hub center steering. And of course it's not just Bimotor, they've got funny front ends, the BMWs have as well. So the GS has got a hub center or funny front end, the RT, the the big Ks as well, because they're so heavy. They suit having a funny front end. The riding technique isn't any different. Okay, with fork dive, it will help you turn into the corner. Road speeds, it'll be a little bit better, but you know, that technique of braking, turning into the corner off the throttle and then applying the brakes still applies on hub center steering, because it's, you know, the engine is a big interrupter through the corners. So as soon as you get on the throttle and that engine starts spinning, especially on a big bike, the inertia of it just wants to pull the bike up straight and head towards the outside of the corner. And if you're off the throttle going through the corner, then the bike turns really, really sweetly. Theoretically, you could kind of buck that system, but the other thing is you need kind of low corner speed to get the bike turned and pointed in a direction, especially on track, where and then come out fast. So I've said it many times before, we've done MCN tests where we've had readers versus racers, and a reader's corner speed is so much higher than a racer's, but their speed down the end of the straight is a lot lower, because the racer's gone slow in the middle of the corner, turned the bike harder, they're pointing in the right direction, coming out, and they can go full throttle. Whereas if you have a higher mid-corner speed, you can never quite get to full throttle until you're way out of the corner. So I think the riding technique is more or less the same. But on the road, on a sports tour, I'd love to ride that bike actually. I think it would be a really nice system, and it would kind of add to the friendly dynamic of the bike, although you will lose some feel. BMW have cracked it really. Those funny front ends do lack a bit of feel, but the bikes are so well developed and got so much feeling for grip anyway, you never really feel like a passenger. You still feel like you're connected. But let's hope you do buy the Bimotor, and if you do, let us know what it's like. Right, and finally, from the Anti-Conformity Club, thanks for your question. It's a bit of a fun one, I suppose. If you were given unlimited money, yes please, to create the perfect bike, what would you combine from different motorcycles? What horsepower, what weight, clip-ons or handlebars, what engine, what suspension, what chassis, etc.? Thank you. Well, I suppose it depends what type of bike you're looking at. But I would say, if I wanted a bike that could do absolutely everything, from riding to the shops to touring to fast track days, the bike would be, no surprise here, an Aprilia Tuono V4 1100 factory, because it's just such an amazing handling bike and sounding bike, and just the experience it gives you. The suspension's incredible. So I'd have that, but then I would meld in the riding position of the Super Duke 1390 or 1290 KTM, because it is a little bit more upright, a lot more spacious in the bars. The Tuono is still relatively kind of on your wrists, a lot more leg room, and with the comfort seat, the Tuono, the V4, the KTM I had a couple of years ago as a long-term test bike, is one of the most comfortable bikes I've ever ridden of any bike with a comfort seat. Just beautiful riding position. And even with a little screen, I think the wind protection, it was decent as well, without ever being noisy and buffeting. So it's quite a boring answer. It'd be mainly Tuono with hints of Super Duke. And then as far as the dash goes, Super Duke, I'm not that keen on the dash. I'm not that keen on the Aprilia's dash. It looks a little bit Fisher Price. The Ducati dash I think is nice on the top level bikes, but they're quite technical, so I'd probably go for a BMW dash, that kind of big, bold, clear dash that BMWs have had probably for over a decade now. So that would be my sort of do it all bike. If I wanted my ultimate track day bike, I've already got it, GSXR 750, just as it is. But there you go, quite predictable answers from me. But thanks very much for watching and all your questions. Long may they continue. Keep an eye out for some more what makes this bike great videos. Really good one for next week. Hope you enjoyed the speed triple last week as well. Couple of other nice little bits and bobs coming up on the channel. Keep a lookout for the smiley jacks when they go online as well, and I will see you soon.